Hey guys, so since the most recent update, I think by far the question that people have asked me the most is what do I think exactly about the float step technique being removed from the game? So in this video, we're going to go in depth about this issue as well as what I think the true issue is, because I'll just straight up tell you guys that I don't think the removal of float step itself is the problem we should be focusing on here. So in order to, I guess, truly fix issues people are having in this game, I think we need to go to like the root cause of the issue. And so I guess the first thing to do in this instance is to really think about, okay, what really is the issue here? So if we break down the series of events that I guess led up until this point related to this issue, we basically get the following sequence. So number one, somebody discovered the float step technique and publicized it. Now, in reality, it wasn't just the float step that this person publicized, but more so just shed light on how the AI behaved in the game. What sort of actions could the AI effectively fight against, and what sort of actions essentially broke the AI, therefore like allowing the player to more or less trap the AI into an endless loop of attacks. Because it actually wasn't just float step. All you had to do was just drop combo, leave a very tiny window for the AI to be able to react, and then go into another attack, and that's what triggered the AI to quote-unquote break. So that's number one. Number two, we have this like 2 to 3 year-long gap where this loophole in the AI's behavior is basically just untouched by the developers. Clearly, they have been aware of this, for a long time. They've been aware of people doing this for a long time, and seemingly didn't really care to fix it because they just didn't do anything about it, right? And so when you leave something like this on the table for such a long time, it just naturally becomes ingrained in the way a lot of people play the game, even though it's obviously not, what it was never intended as a way to play the game in the first place, clearly. All right, so that's number two. Moving on to number three, we basically come to the update, that released on August 24th, 2022, which patched the loophole in the AI. So now you can no longer exploit the weakness in the AI's programming, and I think, at least for me, in my personal experience since playing since the update released, they, I think, have made some additional changes to the way the AI behaves, because it seems that bots just don't play the game the way they used to. It's a bit different than the way they used to play the game before. Maybe that's just my own experience, but regardless, bottom line is they changed the behavior of the AI in the game to no longer be affected by what we call the quote-unquote float step technique. So that's really the timeline of events here related to this issue. So just to give the sort of the TLDR version of that, essentially we have number one, loophole in AI behavior discovered and publicized. Number two, developers do nothing about it for a period of 2 to 3 years, which is ridiculous. And number three, developers decide to change the AI behavior and patch the loophole as of the most recent update. So those are the three sort of steps that we have in the, I guess, life cycle of this sort of like, loophole. Now, of those three things, I would actually say that the most important is number two, right? Which is the developers not doing anything for a 2 to 3 year period. The fact that the developers let this go on for as long as they did, which again is something like 2 to 3 years long since it became publicized. So people, including myself, have actually been fighting AI using this same style for 3 years, which, by the way, is literally the majority of the lifespan of this game. And so when we do the same thing, we being players, over and over again for so long, we obviously get used to it, and it ultimately becomes sort of like the norm. And at the end of the day, the decision to let this just drag on for so long, I think, was a really, really big mistake by them. Now, this sort of brings me to the point that I ultimately wanted to address, which is I don't think the actual removal of float step is the root of the issue. Right, I mentioned in the beginning of this discussion that we really have to get to the root of the issues to solve the problems in this game, and I don't think I don't think them removing float step is the root cause of the issues that people are having right now. The root of the issue, at least in my opinion, is the PvE system in this game as a whole. Actually, I remember I remember doing a video talking about this a long time ago. I don't remember which video exactly it was, but I think it was probably around the time of the 2nd year anniversary. But I specifically remember saying that through all the issues this game has, the number one most important problem is just the entire PvE system. Because with as many issues that exist when it comes to PvP, when you think about how many people are playing PvP versus PvE, which by the way, there are way more people who explicitly play PvE than play both PvP and PvE. The problem with PvE is just, I think, more important overall because it affects way more people. So I think when you compare the issues in both PvP and PvE, the issues that are explicitly related to PvE, I think are probably more pressing. So, they remove float step. And all this does is it emphasizes just how bad the PvE system in this game is. Right? I mean, in my mind, if you can't cheese your way through a game without it being sort of unbearable, then the game is inherently not good. Right? And I've tried thinking about how they could possibly fix PvE in this game, but it's just so apparent that this game was built with the foundation of PvP in mind, that it's really hard to think of an appropriate fix that would address the majority of issues with PvE. I think that in this game specifically, PvP and PvE are played so differently and viewed at so differently that having the same groundwork and the same systems for both PvE and PvE just fundamentally doesn't work. And I'm not saying that there are people that, there aren't people that don't enjoy PvE, because they definitely do exist for sure. But I think that I could say with a fair degree of certainty that a lot of players just don't enjoy PvE at all. And this is a big topic. I mean, I could go on for a long time talking about the issues with PvE here, but how it doesn't work, et cetera. But they have spent, by they, I mean the developers, they have spent a lot of time and resources and effort trying to fix it. I mean, you take a look at co-op, you take a look at the Tournament of Power mode, you take a look at Full Power Battle. These are all attempts by the developers to introduce a popular and well-received PvE experience in this game, and I would argue that they all failed. Now, when you look at all these individual modes, like co-op was a good concept, poorly executed. Tournament of Power, I don't know. A Tournament of Power is kind of a unique situation. I don't know if I'd really want to throw that into the same bucket as co-op and Full Power Battle, but it's still PvE technically, but it's sort of just like its own thing. And then for Full Power Battle, again, I think the skeleton of the mode, and I've been saying this since it released, right? I actually did enjoy it when it first released. Like the actual skeleton of the mode, like Full Power Battle, I think is actually a good idea and it's fun, but it's not really something that you sit down and like you're excited to play, and it's not like something like I can't see the entire game being built around that system of PvE. So I guess that sort of brings me to the main point here, which is, at what point do you just look at the big picture of the PvE system as a whole and come to the conclusion that it just simply doesn't work, right? And this, this brings me to the 2 points that I want to say. Number one being, to you guys, you people, you guys listening to the video and watching the video, what solutions do you guys have to this issue? Do you have any solutions to the problem that is just, I guess, the overall PvE experience in this game? Because people definitely do play PvE for sure, but I think when you look at the reasons why they're playing PvE, I would argue most of the time it's not just to sit down and have a good time, it's to gain rewards, which I think is a good segue into my second point, which is that maybe, with all this in mind, this game should just start shifting to be more PvP oriented. And I would argue it already is pretty PvP oriented, but based off of what I said earlier, I think the best way to do that, I think, would be just to take a look at the rewards that people are sort of forcing themselves to play PvE for, and just move them over to PvP, right? If the game wants to bill itself as a PvP focused game and PvP remains the main draw of the game, you would think that you would want most of your players and for new players to be experiencing the best aspect of the game. So to me, that would be a good first step in addressing the issue with PvE, just having people play it less, which kind of sucks to say because you don't really want to encourage people to play a mode less in your game. But again, I think when it comes to what you want your player base to be doing as a developer is you want people to be focusing and I guess spending more time in areas of your game that you think they're going to enjoy more. Because at this point, I think we're past the point of, oh yeah, just fix it. I think this is probably the one of the comments I see the most is like, oh, well, they should just fix this or they should just fix that. And in response to that, I'll say, okay, sure, but how do they fix it? That's why I'm actually asking you guys, like legitimately, I want to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on how they would fix this. And I'm not saying it's up to us to provide solutions to fix the problem, because at this point, I mean, from the beginning, this is their product, right? The game is their product. Their job as a development studio and as a company is to provide us with a product that we want to consume. So it's up to them at the end of the day to come up with viable solutions to the problems with their product. But I think in order to help the game and improve the game, I think we should at least do our best to provide solutions to them, because otherwise it's just never going to be better. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just don't know if it's worth investing the time and resources into fixing PvE, and I'm talking about from their standpoint, when in reality it probably would require massive, never before seen huge overhauls, right, of the entire way to play the game. And at that point, you might as well just make a new game, honestly. I don't I'm not a developer, so I don't realistically know how much of a time investment, a resource investment, a monetary investment it would take to actually completely from the ground up overhaul the entire PvE system. But I'm assuming it would take substantial resources. I'm assuming it would probably take away from the time and effort they could be spending on PvP, on new characters and stuff like that we actually really care about. But that's at the end of the day, in a nutshell, what where we're at with this situation. And it's really the removal of float step, I guess we could sort of thank, right? We could thank the removal of float step for sort of shedding the light on this even more, because again, this has always been an issue with the game. It's not like this, oh, all of a sudden PvE sucks, right? It's always sucked. It's just this little blip in, I guess, the coding of the behavior of the AI and how it works that allowed us to sort of bypass PvE sucking, right? Basically, what float step allowed us to do is it allowed us to ignore PvE sucking, right? But now that the feature that let us ignore PvE sucking is gone, PvE just sucks. that's the most the most layman terms way I could sort of explain this. But it's definitely a problem that's existed pretty much since the start of the game. So I guess let me know down below what you guys think would be potential viable solutions to the problem. Do you think they would actually have to go back and revamp the entire thing? Because again, I think the main takeaway that I want to emphasize again is this game was literally created with the idea in mind that it would be a PvP game. And so when you take a system that's designed for PvP and build a PvE system around that, I don't know if that's effective, because you're not going in, it's basically like starting with I don't know the best way to describe it. It's basically like starting let's say you want to cook a meal, right? And your end goal for the day is you want to cook a steak, and the only meat you have is chicken. Like, how do you get to a steak from a chicken? You can't. you actually cannot. So I think they started from an area that just could not get to their destination. Like, there's something separating where they want to go from where they started, and they chose the path of PvP, whereas they sort of wanted to do both PvE and PvP. I don't know if that really works that well. So that's, I guess, the best way I could sort of make an analogy for that. But let me know down below what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one.